So, glass insulators, Bloomer, Wisconsin. Yes, these are the new docks. We used to go that way. Bob's Meats is right there. This is for our drivers, although actually most of them probably know how to get here. I didn't know how to get here, but I think it's gonna be a while unloading. So, let's see if I can finish this short story that's been taking weeks and weeks and weeks to frickin' finish. For the love of Pete. Okay. From where we left off, as if in confirmation, the child whimpered again. And turned his head from the light. Buddy looked at him. The boy's nose was swollen and he could see dried blood on his upper lip. He could see the arm because the child was covered by one of his jackets. It was cold in the trailer, and Sherry had helped herself to whatever coverings she could find. He lifted the jacket slowly and the child woke, screaming. Vernon Clarence's lower left arm seemed to have an extra elbow. Okay, he said, this is not good. I'm going to drive you to Rollins, and while they take care of the kid, I'll get you all a motel room. He's hurt, and this is not a good place for you to be. Race could come over here easy and start up again. And as soon as Greg leaves, I bet you know that's what happens. Come on, Sherry, let's go. Let's get the kid to a doctor. He wished now he had a cell phone. The trip to the hospital was a nightmare. All three children crying. Sherry chain smoking, his head ringing with bourbon and fatigue. Barbette had sat on the package of pork chops and the cold, wet meat had set her off. At the hospital, Vernon Clarence was carried into a curtained cubicle by a tall, foreign-looking nurse. He heard Sherry tell her that Vernon Clarence had fallen down the trailer steps. There was a lot going on in the emergency room, and every cubicle was full. People rushing back and forth. There were deputies and troopers leaning over people. He understood there had been a major accident on I-80. Cherry came out, and while she sat in the crowded waiting room under the pitiless glare of lights, surrounded by signs that said, "No smoking," he went to find a motel room that could accommodate the four Whams. At the first motel, he got the details. East of Rollins, a semi had jackknifed and caused a chain reaction involving more than 30 vehicles. The highway was closed, and every motel room in town was occupied. There was nothing left, and people were knocking on residents' doors asking for shelter. He would have to take Sherry and her kids back out to his trailer. He was involved in something ugly and made his mind to move to Alaska as soon as he could get out of it. Back at the hospital, he found her standing outside the doors, smoking. They're not done with him. Been some kind of accident on the interstate, so everything is taking forever. They got a lot of hurt people here. Lyle fell asleep on that couch thing, and Barbette too. It could be a while. I've got bad news too. There's no motel rooms because of the accident, so I guess I'll have to take you back to my place. You better be thinking what you want to do in the morning. I can take you to a shelter if they got that kind of thing here. Oh, I don't need to do that. Race will be okay in the morning. He gets bad sometimes when he's drinking. But you'll see, Greg will talk him out of the meanness, and he'll be just as sweet as pie in the morning, all sorry and nice. Sherry, I don't want to tell you how to run your life, but you got to think about the kids. He could really hurt them. Hell, he could kill them. He could kill you. He's a strong guy, and drunk, strong guys are dangerous. I guess I know Race pretty good, better than you anyways. He'll be okay. It happened before, and Greg can handle him. He's probably got him calmed down by now. Jesus, he said. Do you want me to take you back to your place? He had the worst headache of his life, and it wasn't all from bourbon. A nurse's aide came out the door and said, Miss Wham, the doctor wants to talk to you. I'll wait here, said Buddy, as Sherry threw her cigarette down and went inside. Sherry came out pulling her big sweater around her breasts. They're going to keep him tonight. They're writing up a report, says it was possible child abuse. The cops are going to pick Race up and question him. I had to tell him he hit Vernon Clarence. They don't believe he fell down the steps. Race will be real mad, so I can't go back there tonight. One of the cops going to pick him up right away, maybe, or in the morning. They got a lot happening right now. He looked at his watch. It was past 1, and by the time they got back to his place, it would be pushing 3. It looked like he was in for it. There was only Race's truck and Greg's old wagon in the Wham's yard. They put Lai and Barbette on the couch. He gave Sherry his own bed, rolled up his sleeping bag near the door, and was asleep in minutes. He was dreaming of the waitress at the cafe where he'd been drinking, dreaming that she flashed different colors from a kaleidoscope of whirling cop lights, and that she was stroking his penis, her enameled nails tickling when he felt the stroking was real, and he could smell Sherry, a mixture of burned meat, baby shit, and sweat. She pulled him on top of her. He wanted desperately to stop and tried, but it had been too long. The dream was strong, and his traitorous body went for the jackpot. The sharp wind wedging under the door and some light noise woke him. He was stiff with cold, his face pressed against the door. For a moment he did not recognize where he was until he rolled over and saw Barbette on the sofa staring at him. He sat up, the terrible night returning in big, indigestible lumps. Mama can't find the sugar puffs, the child said. I don't have sugar puffs, he croaked. His head was swimming. Mama, he don't have no sugar puffs, the outraged girl shouted, kicking the sofa and rousing Lai, who began to cry. He saw Sherry then fiddling with his coffee maker, stymied by the unfamiliar gadget. He got up, conscious of his stained, baggy underwear, which seemed to be made of plastic wrap, seized his jeans and shirt from the floor, and went into the bathroom. As he passed her, he told Sherry to leave the coffee alone, that he would make it in a minute. The shower was a sometime thing, but he had to get the smell of the night's horrors off, and he was grateful for the sputtering trickle, even when the water went cold and left him gasping and shaking. He urinated in the drain. Dressed, he went straight to the coffee maker. Sherry was sitting at the table, smoking a cigarette and drinking a soda she had found in the refrigerator. He looked out the tiny window. There was a tumbled mass of indigo and salmon cloud in the east. The faded rabbit brush lashed in the blustery wind, and a streak of color showed where the sun would soon rise. There was no sign that the police were coming for Race. Turn this engine off here. It's too noisy. There we go. There was no sign that the police were coming for Race. Greg's old power wagon stood in its usual place. The first flakes of snow shot through the fierce air. The coffee pot quit mumbling, and he poured himself a cup of strong black, then another for Sherry. He wanted to get her moving. "Thanks, honey," she said in an artificially sweet voice that he interpreted to mean she thought she now had some claim on him. "Sherry," he said, "look, last night was nothing. It was a mistake. Tell you the truth, you kind of raped me. Sooner you get going, the better." She pouted for a minute, then said, "But we got to go get Vernon Clarence. They said he could be picked up any time after 9. Yeah, well, I Suggest you go get Race's truck and drive up to Rollins yourself. And I sure don't see any cruisers coming for Race. Sherry slurped at her coffee and looked at him from under her eyelashes as though measuring. I just said that about them picking him up. I knew you wanted to do it with me, and I did too, so I just said it. But you told me they didn't believe you about Vern and Clarence falling down the stairs. Yeah, they did. They just said they'd keep him overnight and come pick him up this morning. Sherry, let's get something straight. I didn't want to do it with you. It was against my will. Yet he knew there had been a measure of vigorous participation motivated by vengeance against Race. Could have fooled me, she said, and gave him a horrible smile. He was beginning to guess that she might be picking him to replace Race. He literally felt his neck hair bristle. I want sugar puffs, whined Barbette. Then why the hell don't you go home and get some, he snapped. Can I, Mama? Sure. Go on over. The child was out the door, slamming it behind her, but the catch failed, and the door began to boom and swing in the wind. He got up and closed it, poured himself another cup of coffee. Out the window, he could see Barbette scampering up the Wham steps just as Greg came to the door, fumbling at his crotch. Okay, we'll leave it there. We're at 12 minutes. Does this story ever end? Oh my God. Well, a couple. 4 more pages, I promise. I'll be done with it by Easter, okay?